Little Nemo, the Dream Master. Journey to a Land of Wonder. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Joe.
And I'm just going to start off the episode with a little bit of my bias here, but I freaking love the Japanese-American film Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland, which is different than this video game Little Nemo the Dream Master. If they really wanted to make it a complete tie-in, they probably should have just named it the same thing. But I grew up with this movie on VHS, which is the only way it could have ever been successful, because it took them like 10 years to make this film, gorgeously animated. And again, as I mentioned, Japanese-American, because it was literally two different studios from two different countries coming together to make this. But like, it practically bombed by all measures of like what you could imagine they were hoping for. And how long it took them to get it off the ground, like 10 years to make this movie. Like, I know another movie that took 10 years. It's called Shrek, but obviously we all know Shrek. I don't think you guys know Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland, right?
I can't believe that it took two countries 10 years to rip off Alice in Wonderland.
Have you seen the movie?
I heard it mentioned in Cabin in the Woods in an offhand comment.
That's really all you need to know.
I don't know why I'm like taking a stance against it. I've actually never seen Alice in Wonderland.
Neither
so
have
I don't know
I.
if it's ripping it off. But I did yesterday and today watch Little Nemo Adventures in
Slumberland.
You watched it twice?
No, I watched like a third of it yesterday and 2/3 of it today.
Isn't it like a 70-minute movie?
No, it's pretty long actually for a kids movie. I thought.
Maybe that's part of the
like
problem.
Longer than Lord of the Rings Extended.
It's funny because I just watched it this morning again to refresh myself because I have it on Blu-ray, which it just looks fantastic on.
4K Blu-ray or just Blu-ray?
They
like
never released They didn't release a 4K Blu-ray for it. I would love that. I would buy it again, actually.
Okay.
It's an hour and 34 minutes.
Oh, that's freaking long.
I mean, it's longer than kids movies.
No, it's longer than kids movies for sure. I was out of whack there, but I do think like a 90-minute movie could probably be finished in a day, Joe.
I'm just saying that I was disappointed because I thought this is about Captain Nemo or maybe his son or something. So I thought it'd be about like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but no, it's just like a kid in pajamas.
I thought this was going to be Finding Nemo, and we were going to be looking for like a little clownfish in the ocean.
See, at least it'd be in the ocean.
But this being based off of the animated film, the original source material, it was already an animated film back in 1911. It was one of the earliest animated films, and it was in color to boot. So that's pretty incredible. But
it was in color in 1911?
1911, yeah.
Wow.
I don't know how. Maybe they colored it after the fact or something, because I've only ever seen the color. I've only ever seen the colored version, but still pretty freaking cool. And then, obviously, that 1911 silent animated film is like, well, where'd that come from? It's from a New York Herald comic strip back in 1905. Little Nemo in Slumberland. He wasn't having adventures. He was just in Slumberland. And that comic ran for like 20 plus years. But the most interesting thing about all of this is that that comic ran for 20 years, was a big deal probably right before the Roaring '20s really took off, and then was like out of print for decades. So would you really want to like, hedge your entire like studio, your newly formed Japanese-American studio on like, you know what, we're going to bring all audiences back together because grandparents are going to be able to take their grandkids to the cinema to see Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland. Like, that feels a little weird, right?
I mean, it is, but also if you think about it, like, it was a story from, ago, and, nobody really, kids weren't like, oh, I can't wait to see an Aladdin movie until they came out with Aladdin. Same thing with like half of all Disney movies.
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast, Snow White, Cinderella.
Well, it sounds like it went about as well as you just described.
Yeah, it went pretty poorly.
Yeah, right.
It went pretty poorly for Little Nemo, but hey, we got a great movie, in my opinion. Great movie. I think it still held up. Joe, did you like the movie?
I quite liked it, but I liked it as like, now I like more. It's got a Studio Ghibli vibe, and that kind. I don't know if when I was a kid if it would have been one of my favorites, but I really liked it a lot now.
Yeah, I really liked it as a kid though too, just because there's a lot of like the dreaming aspect of it all too, and like whether it's actually happening or whatever. Like it's very, it's a great fantasy story, but also like, is the king also like Santa Claus was like something you would ask as a kid? Like you don't ask that now as an adult, but like when you're a kid, you're like, hey, that guy kind of looks like Santa Claus too. It was like something again.
Like David Lynch for kids.
We had it on VHS. Yeah, exactly. We had it on VHS, so you could just keep watching it. And I'll tell you, it's also kind of scary if you're a kid watching that movie.
It's got a lot. I feel like, I don't know, movies from that era. It's like, and I don't think this is a negative thing. There's a lot of action scenes that probably don't need to be in like this story, but like I can imagine as a kid just being like, oh, here's the train scene again. I can't wait to watch this. And like it's a lot of just really fun, thrilling scenes for a kid,
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the train scene too, because that's another one that's like moderately scary. But then like again, something you kind of want to see too. You're like, oh, is the train actually going to like come into the house? Like that would be nuts. But then the actual like Nightmare Land stuff is just really scary. Like the whole like door with the like goop coming out and everything. Like
what is goop? Man,
like just whatever Gwyneth Paltrow's company is about.
All right, that was good.
Gotcha there. So we're not gonna make this a whole movie review or anything, but I would just like to say again, like just to show what great pains they went to and everything. Like they had the choreographer for Michael Jackson's music videos do the dance sequences for Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland, the film, that they would like watch all these people dance and then they would animate based off of that footage. And it's like, Joe, do you remember the dance scenes at all? Like, I feel like it didn't need choreography of that level.
Yeah, you know what I remember more than the dance scenes is seeing the opening credits that had like the credits for the dancers.
Right.
And I was like, oh, they got real dancers. And then I don't even remember even like the dancing standing out to me that much. But I will say, like I said, I watched part of it yesterday, then I went to bed, and then today I like watched it while I was doing things. So like, I wasn't like fully absorbed. So maybe I missed the dancing.
Does this have anything to do with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
It does not. Why?
I'm just trying to find like moments of where I can like have some kind of input. I know. Again, Captain Nemo.
Why don't we talk about the game then, Sean? Because surely you did your homework and played, right?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Great. Game. The player controls Nemo in a side-scrolling platformer.
Yeah,
what do we
call
it? Yeah. Okay, great.
Puzzle.
Sometimes I get yelled at by you guys when I say platformer. I just throw that around to everything. Everything's a platformer. But yes, Sean, puzzle platformer, because each level requires you collecting a specific number of keys in order to progress. The required numbers of keys is only revealed at the exit, where it shows you how many locks are on the door. So there's like, you get to the door and all of a sudden there's 8 locks on it, and you only had 3 keys. So now you're going to have to go back through the level and find those other keys. But how do you find those keys and how do you navigate through those levels? Well, thankfully, your main weapon in this game is candy, which briefly stuns enemies for a very short, insignificant amount of time. Does not kill them. It would be quite nice if it killed them, but instead, the correct way to kill any enemy in this game is by feeding candy to various animals that you run into along the way, such as a hermit crab, a gorilla, a hornet, a frog, a mole, I think, and a lizard. You feed them the candy, and then you kind of like morph in with them or like put on their skin.
Yeah,
and now you can kill the enemies.
There is no like rule like on what actually happens. Sometimes you're riding. Sometimes you become like. Sometimes it's like this Mario thing where you're just like the Nemo version of whatever animal. But yeah, I would have preferred some kind of internal consistency with that. But no, we don't. You somehow synthesize. I don't know, with this animal.
Yeah. Well, and is it? I mean, because when you feed them the candy and they fall asleep, and then once they're asleep, that's when you can like either ride them or wear them or whatever. But then like their eyes are still closed. So are they like sleepwalking because you're the dream master? Like you're controlling sleeping beings?
That's what the words mean in the title.
Which, for the record, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, you're more familiar with the source material, has nothing to do with the movie.
No.
That doesn't happen in the movie.
He can't hijack body snatch things in the movie?
Nope, no. And these animals aren't even in the movie. Yeah,
that's really weird. I mean, it's a cool concept. That's weird to make it about this then.
Well, yeah, because you like need... You don't necessarily need these animals, right? Like, granted, some of them are kind of interesting that the lizard makes it so now you can, like, scale up walls that you otherwise couldn't reach and stuff like that, or the hornet allows you to fly a little bit. Like, I like these... I like them for the reasons for how they open up the platforming sections, but it would just be so much easier if your candy actually did any damage, right?
But like, that takes away... Okay, but the thing is... You do need to turn into these animals to get the keys. So you do need to take advantage of this mechanic to complete the game. And I think
it's the entire game, yeah. I think the entire game is about controlling these animals.
Yes. So what you're saying would be to remove anything, like, anything unique about the game, and now it's just a typical platform platformer.
I think we got out of sync there. I was saying that just the candy should also kill enemies. Like, that's all I was arguing.
Sure, but I think that's also kind of trivializing other things with the game where you would, like, you know, if you become, like, the frog lizard guy, you can then jump on enemies and hurt them. A lot of the animals can't do any damage, but... I don't know, I think a part of the game is that you are otherwise sort of defenseless.
Okay, I like that idea, that you're defenseless in the dreams until you merge and become the Dream Master with these animals. I just hate how difficult this game is.
Oh, yeah, it is hard.
It's a very difficult game.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
I guess like the happy medium I would find is that I would wish that maybe more of the animals had attacks or different ways to attack, but yeah, I also don't think I would want the candy to do damage because it would de-incentivize me to use some of the animals, like at a lot of the times.
I think you still need to use them just for navigation.
Need to use them for navigation, but like that would be it. There are times where I'm like, oh, I want to be, what is it, like the gorilla can like smash things. Like I want to be this just so I can get past these enemies, rather than like get out of the gorilla suit so I could fight normally and then just use the animals as like just a way to get to the next thing.
I agree, and I think there's some instances where the animal looks like it would do damage, but it then does not.
Yeah,
like the hermit crab. Like actually, when you jump as a hermit crab in the water, like you turn into like a torpedo, and that makes sense because then you kind of bury yourself in the ocean floor sand, where you can kind of act like a mole as you would above ground, but you kind of also look like a missile that should do some damage to whatever's below you or even above you, because the pointy end goes that way, but no, like there's nothing there. I think that like there are some missed opportunities for more of that, but I still like the core concept of it.
Yeah, I really like this concept too. And there are like, it's not all just like, okay, here's this key, you need this. Kind of like times where, there's like the mole where you don't even have to necessarily dig under these like soft ground areas all the time. But like if you have the mole suit, you can go see what's down there. And like that kind of thing is neat.
Yeah, I think it requires exploration of the world because, as you'll find out early on, if you don't carefully explore the world as you're moving from left to right, just progressing through the stage the first time, you're gonna have to go back anyway. Like there's no way to get around seeing every nook and cranny and finding the keys, and it's going to be a lot more disappointing to just try to get to the end unless you were strategically like trying to figure out like, well, okay, I just need to know how many keys there are, so you go to the
lay
end.
Of the land here.
Yeah, and how many am I looking for? Because there is a moment where you always like think like, okay, I got it all, and then you go to the end and it's like, oh, I'm missing one, or even worse, like I'm missing 3 keys.
I was
like,
always missing one.
Right, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, where is that? And now you have to go through the entire stage. I almost wonder if it was like they should have made it so that when you get to the end of the stage, it like reveals on like a crude map or something, like the general area of where that key is. That might trivialize it a little too much, but it also is a pain to kind of go everywhere and look for it again because of the backtracking part of it. Because it's not necessarily easy, again, because the game is not easy, it's not necessarily easy to get around in this game. If this was the kind of game that was more forgiving and just had like challenging platforming that you needed to navigate around, I'd be fine with it. But the enemies are a constant nuisance.
Yes.
So you do have to like backtrack carefully, which really prolongs the length of these levels if you don't know where all the keys are.
I mean, I agree that the enemies were a nuisance in that sense, but I don't think it's even in my like top like 50% of like NES games with like really difficult like enemy placement. I mean, I think even like Castlevania enemies are more of and not in like they're way more like of a challenge and a difficult to navigate around for me than.
Well, like, because the Castlevania enemies you have to take out, you know, like little Nemo, Castlevania you have to take out, like you have to clear through.
Yeah, exactly.
Here you can't clear through these enemies, like
but you can get around them with all these like with all. I guess like there are okay. Now that you're saying this, there were plenty of times where I couldn't jump over an enemy because I was just Nemo, and yes, if that's what you're saying, then I do agree. But like as long as I had the animal that I needed, it was always good. But yeah, I guess. It's not so much that the enemies were everywhere for me, but there were times where I'm like, okay, I'm just Nemo, and I'm not going to be able, or I'm this other animal, I'm not going to be able to jump over this enemy. But like that didn't like really hinder me.
So the one thing that I think would help, just the information part of the game, would be either to have like a number of keys over.
Mm-hmm.
Total number of keys you need. I don't need to like have like an arrow pointing towards the last key or whatever. I think that hurts it a bit, but I think just knowing how many you need to start can give you a better sense of how thorough you have to be moving forward. I think that would just make me feel better. Not that would have any actual effect on how you play, but I think it would make us feel better. And 2, I think like when it comes to the enemies and especially how you treat them as the animals, I think there is some frustration there because like the gorilla. You are a massive gorilla, and you have a massive hitbox, and yet your hurt box is only like half as tall as that. So there are instances where you cannot attack like worms that jump at you or something along those lines because they're just too short and there's a lot of like hills. Now, one might say that is part of it. Like this is like the balancing of these animals, but I think like the different like aspects of them, like the speed and like the jump height and can it hurt, can it climb, like that's already kind of doing that. So I think, like, just to reiterate what I said earlier, I just think all of them, I don't care if Nemo has an attack, but I just want the animals to have an attack that can, like, that you can be pretty, you can be useful throughout.
And so once you get around the idea of just, okay, collecting keys, going along the stages and everything, how does the gameplay change between stages? Is it just, for people like me and Joe who watch the movie, is it just the progression of the story? Is it like the exciting new environments? What keeps the gameplay fresh here?
I mean, I like that there is a pretty good variety of each level is like, because there's so many of these games that like it's just the same tile set in a different arrangement, and that's really annoying. I like that each of these levels looks completely different. I like that while there are some animals that you'll see throughout the level, like or throughout the game, like as the game expands, there are more animals to be. And same with the enemies. Like there are different enemies that have different attack patterns, different behaviors. I think that there's a pretty good selection of things going on here.
Yeah, and it throws things here and there
like
too.
There's
a level where
you're
on the train. Yeah, and there's a level where it's largely a normal level, but then there are parts of it that are like really vertical, where you're flying up a lot of the times, and yeah, like they changed. There's even one. It really doesn't. It is just the really the tile set that's changed, but everything's upside down, which is a reference to the movie, and like yeah, even though it's just like okay, it's just the background, everything's upside down. It like does give it a different feel psychologically.
At the beginning of every level, when this different monster would approach me and just give me some.
Those are your friends.
I know, but they're still scary.
You didn't like Flip?
I didn't like
Moonbee.
Their names. A lot of they were scary looking, man.
He always has a gigantic cigar in his mouth, and you would vibe with him.
Maybe
and
now,
that's Mickey Rooney.
But if I was
Mickey
like
Rooney,
6, was that Mickey Rooney?
That was. They spared
in
no
the game,
expense.
Not in the movie.
Yeah, they mocapped him for the game, actually.
Wow.
But speaking of like these other characters and like these animals and their names, this is a game where it's taken Little Nemo and it's giving you these animal companions. But Little Nemo has an animal companion, and as far as I've seen, he's not in this game.
Yeah, where's Icarus, the flying squirrel?
There are flying squirrels, but they're enemies.
Yeah.
Icarus wouldn't do that.
Wait, one of the canonical best friend?
I didn't even think that one of those flying squirrels would be his canonical best friend. Partnering with all these animals, you partner with a flying squirrel, so it could be Icarus, the best friend, like sectagonist, maybe tertiary protagonist.
Well, they did it.
But it would be like making a Back to the Future game without Doc.
Little Nemo takes place in 1905. Like not even just when they made, but like the movie Adventures in Slumberland takes place in 1905, and like flying squirrel as a pet, like is that like?
Well, why does it matter that it's 1905? It's the first thing you see in the game. It's not pertinent, and then there's levels later that there's like modern skyscrapers in it. So like it just seems like was that just that year of the movie?
That was the year that it was like in the real world. Well, obviously, none of that stuff. None of that stuff exists. Like, his dad looks like he's like a old time bang-minded Mary Poppins or whatever. Like, I don't know enough about Nemo's real world because we spend so much time in the dream world.
He gets yelled at a lot.
The dream world is pretty cool, Sean. It is kind of steampunk in a way.
Okay.
Like fantasy, colorful steampunk, not like
like circusy steampunk.
Yeah, not Final Fantasy.
I don't like circuses.
Yeah, circus punk, actually. Little Nemo invented circus punk.
Clowncore?
Clowncore, yeah, I got that idea from Little Nemo. Especially the Nightmare Lands. There is a Nightmare Land level in this game, and, depending on how you look at it, it's either an incredible... Or, finally, you're free from the keys. You just have to get through the levels now. You don't have to collect all these keys and get behind locks and everything. And you have the Royal Scepter with you now, which, Sean, unfortunately, you don't know about, but the Royal Scepter requires a very specific spell to be read aloud in order for it to do any damage or cast any kind of magic. And that spell is Pajama Shazama Shazama Pajama Pajama Kajama Shazama Pajama. Pajama Kazama Pajama 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 Kazama
right.
Pajama.
Yeah, no, you got it. That's cool.
And I'm pretty sure I killed somebody somewhere in the world by saying that out loud. So, Joe, did you know what I'm talking about? Like that is a really funny moment, a whimsical moment in the game, in the movie that's kind of like lost in translation on the game here.
I was pretending that I was the guy you killed with that.
Oh yeah, that'll read.
Yeah, I was like, I can't let this go too long because of how frequently.
Yeah, no, we thought you disconnected
when we actually record these episodes. But yeah, I liked that part of the movie. I will be honest, I don't remember him learning that spell because again, I was kind of like working.
Wow, plot holes.
So, but I remember Icarus holding up the spell and him trying, because like for a while I was like, why is this kid why is this spell pajama? He's just saying pajama over and over again because he couldn't remember the rest of the spell. But I must have missed the scene where he learned the spell.
Well, you missed it. You missed at least where he acquires the paper for the spell. But like that's the whole thing, right? It's like a dream thing where like he missed it too, right? Like he cannot remember the rest of it, and that's kind of scary. It's like when you're not able to like close the door in time, like in a nightmare, like someone's about to break into your house.
Yeah, which they allude to that exact like type of dream where
like, he's being chased in it. You can't turn the light switch off.
It's not exactly that, but he's being chased, and he's like, Mom, help, and she's like standing there, but she can't hear him. And I feel like that's just a dream that like every kid had.
Joe, that part actually is one of those like wasn't scary to me as a kid, was now scary to me. I clocked it as like a scary moment. The mom is just not moving. Like she's moving in the dishes, but she's like her panicked son and she's just not answering him. It's like we don't even see her face. We don't know if her face looks like really screwed up or something.
I was going to get like a turnaround jump scare.
Sean, can you stop interrupting our movie talk?
It's a good question that has to do with the game's story.
What was the question?
What's the worst nightmare that you remember from your childhood?
Well, you
don't particularly know.
I don't think it's worth sharing aloud.
I can't remember many of my nightmares.
There's no way for me to describe in podcast how terrifying a nightmare was for me that I would have it. No, that I would have it for like 7 years straight. Like that is a very...
You're really talking it up, and now our listeners really want to know.
Well, all you need to know realistically is that it's a dream where, very similar to the can't close the door or whatever, it's dark outside, and I'm like in my bedroom or usually like just some room in the house, and I look out the window and there is a yellow car parked in front of our house that like clearly nobody ever parks in our house. Like we lived in the suburbs. It was literally like nobody parked in front of our house. So like, why is this car parked in front of our house? And then a person would get out of that car and start walking towards the house, and I'd be trying to lock the door. I'd be trying to warn my parents, and I just couldn't do it. And it was like a reoccurring dream for the longest time that like basically like different variations of being unable to lock or being able to lock the front door, but now the back door is unlocked, or like, just basically like playing around with like what's open and what's closed. But also like you'd go downstairs and in the laundry room, like he would be waiting in there, it was like you couldn't escape.
Who would be waiting there?
This man.
Whoever got out of the car.
Oh, it's not what I think it is then. Okay. Wow.
It's a man in a suit. Know that the man is he's in like a mascot suit.
Mascot suit?
Yes, he is.
Like, what's the mascot?
What is the mascot, Mike?
He is a bear in pajamas. And that's terrifying if you're a child.
That is terrifying, but I was picturing.
Yes, well, Joe, to be fair, though, the dream eventually did upgrade as I got older to, like, you would be able to, like, I'd be able to, like, grab his head and take off the mascot thing, and then you would see, like, the man wearing the suit, and he just didn't care. Like, I thought that was a big thing. Care. Like, I took his head off, and he just didn't care.
What do you look like under the suit?
He had a bald head, so I hate bald people.
Wow. I'm glad we can get through this on the Little Nemo episode. I'm glad it's very pertinent.
I'm glad that we wasted 10 minutes or more on that because
wasted.
Well, because like we got a game to talk about.
We've been talking about the game.
Sure.
We've been talking about the movie.
Yeah, you guys have been talking about the movie.
I don't know what you're talking about, Sean. There's a game?
I'm talking about Nightmare Land.
The problem when talking about the game really is that it is just, a side-scrolling platformer, find all the keys. It's hard to talk about, like, they put this key in a spot, and, like, we pinpoint that area. Like, we're not doing that kind of in this, so there's not too many, like, unique elements once you get over the individual parts that make up the level. And I feel like we got through that in, like, less than 15 minutes. It does deserve to be talked about a little more because I think, last week we had Kick looks great. This game looks great too. This game has a great soundtrack, I think. And on top of all that, it's well known for its difficulty and everything, but I don't think it's like, I think it's like challengingly difficult. I don't think it's like impossibly difficult.
I didn't particularly like enemy placement. I think there was a lot of stuff. I think it also has this thing, and it's not entirely true when you're Little Nemo, because you're like normal platformer protagonist sized when you're Little Nemo, but when you are an animal, you are massive on that screen, and these enemies are usually massive. So there's just so many opportunities to just get in places where you cannot avoid getting hit. And I think that's where a lot of my frustration was. When we were talking about hardness and difficulty, like, I think that's where I was getting it. I think if, like, maybe everything was sort of the standard, platform protagonist size, would be a little less that, but maybe that's the point too. Like, if you're an animal, you've got maneuverability perks, and it's just trying to balance that out. But yeah, it was frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I won't pretend that I didn't have times where I was frustrated, or that I even that I was any good at getting around these enemies. But not to beat a dead horse, but just these enemies did not bother me even close to as much as, like, almost like the majority of this kind of game that we play on this platform. So, like, I kind of just felt I was like, oh, this feels better enemy placement than normal.
You know what I hated the most,
but, like,
though?
As you're describing it, I see what you're saying. I wasn't feeling it in that moment.
The dandelion seeds. I know how to avoid them, but I just never could.
That's the little, like, skull looking. Oh yeah, they got the little face on them.
Yeah,
and they come down in like a zigzag, right? Yeah, I mean, you just wait until they come straight down and then get out of the way.
Yeah,
but
I know that, but it still hurt.
But I want to backtrack real quick to the music, because I did think this music was beautiful, but I've got to ask, was the stage one, was the music in stage one used in something else? Because I fully 100% know that song, and I don't know why. It's not from the movie, right?
No, I didn't clock it from the movie. I didn't clock any of the in the game from the movie, but I don't remember, like, stage one's music off the top of my head, Joe, but I could just be that it was, like, something that, I don't think it was necessarily, but it could just be something that, you heard on a compilation,
Yeah, it must be, like, the background music that someone uses in, like, a podcast or something.
Right.
It's like that. Da, na, 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 na.
Is that the ESPN song?
Da, na, na, da, na, na.
And then I'll backtrack, but go forward from where Joe was, and I'll go to the second stage of this game, with the train level. And I'll just say, like, I think that's also a very tough level in terms of difficulty. Like, you don't have an animal. You have these toy planes that are constantly, like, flying into you. You can only stun them, but there's enough of them that, like, sure, you might stun one of them, but then the other ones are coming in your path. Like, it's not impossible. Again, you're talking to somebody who just recently beat Castlevania Rondo of Blood. Like, I can play difficult games, okay? I can play very difficult games, for that matter. I'm not saying that this game is Ghosts and Goblins. I don't think it should ever be compared on that level. I'm saying that this is a surprisingly difficult game for a children's audience, just like the film was surprisingly scary for a children's audience. Like, again, it's just like, they certainly didn't want this IP to be too successful, because they stopped it with kids in every way you could imagine.
What year did the movie come out?
The same years around
89?
No, the movie didn't come out in 99.
89.
Oh, 89. Yeah, I think that's true. Yes.
Okay.
So like a year later.
Maybe this is one of those games. It's like it's for people that saw it like 5 to 6 years ago, and they have better hand-eye coordination now. But no, this is for the kids that saw the movie. All right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess again, I'm beating a dead horse. But like, to be clear, like, I do think this game is hard. I just don't think it's that unfair NES hard. The design of the game is like makes it unfairly hard, rather than the design of the game makes it hard intentionally, is what it felt to me.
I don't doubt the intentionality. I just think that in side-scrolling platformers, you are particularly powerless in this game.
Yeah.
I have two thoughts about difficulty that will work into Little Nemo, sure, but just about gaming in general. And that is, first off, modern AAA games have ruined all perception of difficulty and sense of accomplishment for me personally, because I'm starting to realize that like it's not an accomplishment to beat any of these games that are released nowadays, because they're designed to be played through completely and everybody wants you to see the ending. Like I don't think anyone gave a shit on the NES if you ever saw any part of Mega Man other than what other than like what you saw on the box, right? Like they weren't trying to be like, oh, we got to give these people experience. Like, no, you got what you got, and you didn't have the internet to find out about all this shit like we do on the podcast. So you would just be like amazed to learn from like seeing a friend do it or hearing about it at the playground. It's the same, with most games up until basically video games started becoming movies, where now all of a sudden it's like, should I be excited if I beat God of War? Like, not really, right? Like, they plan for everybody to beat that game, and they make it so that anybody can beat that game. I'm not saying like a 4-year-old kid could beat that game, but like, video games are a lot less challenging today than they were, and I know that that's not a hot take. I'm just saying that part to get to the next part about Little Nemo, which is, because we're so good at video games nowadays, right? We feel like, wow, I'm doing such amazing stuff. I'm hitting so many more buttons and everything. I think people tend to play these games too fast. And I think you need to like sometimes step back a little bit when there aren't forced timers on you, and just take these games like a little slower than you might otherwise. And I think, Joe, to your point about like these enemies not being brutally difficult, like if you just approach them slower and you don't try to like run through and just like, I saw a key, so I'm going to go grab that key, and now I'm found another key, and then, okay, I'm going to go to the end of the stage, and turns out I only grabbed 3 keys, and there's 7 of them. Now I got to go back and grab 4. It's like, you just slow down a little bit. A little more digestible and a little easier as a result, and I think we need to encourage that a little bit.
You're encouraging patience?
Yes. But like literal patience, not like being funny and being like, hey, have you tried taking a break? I'm talking about like literally just waiting for like the enemy that you can't jump over.
This is more a situation that we find ourselves in, not so much our listeners, because we do have a time limit.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'll try and take your advice, but I do need to see a lot of the game to be able to talk about it. That means I'm gonna take risks, take chances, live fast, die young.
Otherwise, you wind up talking about a bear in pajamas for 10 minutes.
No. That was. You will say that they like that.
Okay, I hope they will say that they like that. And here's hoping
somebody back me up.
If you just stop
everybody
interrupting
in the Discord
for
who
like
liked it,
1
just say
second.
I liked that.
One thing I wanted to talk quick about that is related to the Nemoverse. Can we call it that? The Nemoverse?
You call it whatever you want.
Great, thank you. Yeah, because it is my decision ultimately. The arcade version of Little Nemo did exist. It was a thing. It was released basically around the same time as the game. only known as Nemo, not Little Nemo, not Adventures in Slumberland. Not the Dream Master.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea or not.
Well, it's really confusing because like they even go to a point in the movie to call him like Little Nemo. So Nemo could literally just be anyone, right? This could be like
maybe he grew up.
Yeah, this could be like a cutoff though, and it could be like, oh, are they talking about Leonard Nimoy? Like maybe like the rest of the screen was dusty, and you just have to.
Yeah, or there was like a character limit of 4.
Yeah. No, it's a Leonard Nimoy game, and then you find out no, it's a Little Nemo game, same initials, but and there are no keys, there are no animal transformations, but there is 2-player co-op where the second player gets to play as Flip.
As the flying squirrel you guys are talking about?
No, that's not Flip. Yeah, Flip is Mickey Rooney, who's also like, how would you put, like
he's a turtle?
He's like an honest man.
With the cigar and like,
yes,
is he wearing like a mask or something over his eyes?
Yeah, why is he green in the face?
I don't know.
But he has like a regular body like for a human and everything, but he just has a green like half of his face, right? Because his mouth is white.
This does sound nightmarish.
Almost frog-like.
It's pretty freaking scary, but Flip is great, and so I'm glad you could play 2-player co-op with Flip. But that led me to another thought about Flip when I was trying to think about how to describe him. You could also describe him as like the thief, and I was thinking about how in the second half of this movie, Joe, when they finally get to Nightmare Land to go save, you have a party of 4. Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland could have easily have been an RPG where you have the wizard, the scientist, who could have been like the mage or whatever. Yeah, the rogue. I think it would have been great as an RPG.
I think I want a modern like Ni no Kuni style Little Nemo game.
Oh, and you control, the animals that you run into in the dream world, and then they transform into the nightmare world.
What is Ni no Kuni?
You don't know Ni no Kuni?
I don't know Ni no Kuni.
It was like a JRPG, but it was in like a Studio Ghibli style.
And it was basically Pokemon, but yeah, in a different.
The one with the guns?
No, that's Palworld.
Yeah.
I'm just fucking with you.
Oh, okay.
So you do know Ni no Kuni.
I don't know Ni no Kuni, but I knew that was Palworld. Continue.
What a roller coaster.
End is a 2022 movie directed by Francis Lawrence. I didn't look up who that is, so that doesn't ring a bell to you guys. But it came out on Netflix. And
so it's probably terrible.
Yeah, generally mixed reviews.
Makes sense.
They're still tapping into this IP, so maybe we could get that Little Nemo JRPG. If we do the Essential Games list. So am I gonna let my biases affect my vote here? No, I'm not going to let them affect my vote. I'm going to say that I enjoyed my little time with Little Nemo the Dream Master, but I don't think I'm going to put this one on the Essential Games list, if only because it feel rather limited in what the gameplay loop was. I didn't enjoy particularly collecting the keys in the stage. It wasn't enjoyable to backtrack. It would have been interesting if they could have found a way to just make it so that the keys that you collect in the stage aren't just used at the end of the stage, but rather to like Legend of Zelda style, like use those keys to unlock other areas to then get like the next key, but the order that you go, like any key could have opened any door, so technically you could just continue to go in your own way, but you ultimately have to explore the entire area the first time through rather than the backtracking. The animals are a fun part of the game, and I think it's pretty neat that there's so many of them. I'm not quite even sure, like, that's pretty cool for, like, in terms of a power-up system, like, just having this many unique ways to explore the platforming levels, but they're also, like, kind of limited in their, like, usefulness. Like, it's very clear which ones you should be using, and I don't think there was really a moment to be, like, in future Kirby games, there are animals as well that like Kirby can hop on, like a hamster, an owl. These are great a frog. These are great things for Kirby, but they're also like, oh, and I want to stick with this guy for the next level, right? Because technically, like, you could use the owl in any level. You don't get that same ability here with these animals. They are, like, short little bursts, and I think it would have been more interesting to, like, have a system where you kind of could be any of the animals, but it's more about what strengths and weaknesses you want to impose on yourself. So I'm not going to put it on the essential games list, but I do think it's a pretty darn good game. And like I said, while it may be challenging, I don't view it as impossible. Joe.
Another week here where I kind of went through a little bit of a roller coaster. I know we did the same thing last week, but I started out, but as I played it more, I'll say that one of my favorite things about Super Mario Bros. 3 is getting the Tanuki suit or getting the frog suit or, and seeing what these new powers do. And that only happens like twice, because those are rare suits. There's only a couple of them. This is like getting the Tanuki suit the game, where there's all these different suits or animal power-ups. And I really did enjoy like that twist on the platformer where it's like, hey, if you want to be able to climb up this thing, you need this animal. And like, hey, what does this animal do? It lets you dig below the ground, and this one lets you hover for, a few paces. And I like that part of it a lot. I also just found this game very clean and charming. I mean, I think that like with what was like, is there enough going on? But like, does it change enough? But the more I think about it, the more I don't think it's enough, because it's the change and the refresh of it all comes from finding these new animal things and dealing with new enemies, using these different animals in different ways. I don't know. I just think it's a really cool gameplay loop. I think I'm going to vote it on the essential games list.
Sean.
All right. So as the one here that has not seen the movie or read the turn of the century comic strip, I was super into the animal transformation / mounting concept in this game. I thought it was really interesting. And now, while recording this episode, I'm learning that's not even like a Little Nemo thing. Like, that's not even a part of it.
It's not a thing he does.
It's not a thing that he does. Now I'm just confused. And I'm just confused about what this game is supposed to be doing. Now, that being said, like, all the complaints that I have are valid. Like, they're not valid. Cold water in my eyes, in terms of just the idea that a lot of these things I really enjoy on paper, and I thought were cool as I was discovering them, and then just kind of got annoyed with as the game went on. Like, sort of how Joe was saying, he started off lukewarm. I kind of stayed lukewarm. I say that this game is not pretty and does not have variety. But I think that a lot of the concepts are a little half-baked. I think that a lot of the animals should have had like some other things aside from just like movement speed and jump height. And I can't put it on the essential games list in terms of just my opinion of the game. But there's a lot of value in playing the game. It is cool. I just don't think it's essential.
Fair enough. I also need to say that I do not think this is an essential adaptation of Little Nemo.
No, that wasn't a part of it.
But the game itself.
That wasn't the basis, but it was still confusing.
I personally would just like to see more from Little Nemo. And how, I don't know, because... And I don't know. I mean, maybe I just want that JRPG game and that's it. Maybe that's enough for me. Maybe I want a game where you finally see his pet flying squirrel. Maybe I want a game where you have to use the GameCube micro to say the pajama spell in order to take care. Like, who knows? And I don't know why I chose the GameCube microphone.
I want a game where we get the team up we've all been waiting for of Icarus Squirrel teams up with Doc Brown of Back to the Future fame, and they just go to town on a great game.
Icarus and Doc Brown really are the new Avengers.